actually required that the eggs had to go side by side. In other words, you couldn't put one on top of the other. They had to be as like this, which meant that you had to make a bigger section for those. If they don't say anything, then we can do it. We can do it tandem. I think a BT82 would be our best part. So you thickness is, but I think it's a millimeter. So you have it 2 millimeters right now. Why don't we? You have 2 millimeters.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. I think you might want to change it to 1 millimeter.
Okay.
Just make it 1.
That's 0.
And then it should tell you also the.
Okay, this is a unique college prep class. It teaches a hands-on component. It instills an interest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and it does it wrapped around a central concept of rocketry, which is something that the state of Hawaii is actually starting to develop as well. We have a large action plan to get a workforce development going on in the state of Hawaii, and this feeds into it. It also feeds into a mechanical engineering program. It feeds into all the physical sciences in one way or another. And so it not only teaches them something that's practical and hands-on, it teaches them something that might come back in the pursuit of a higher academic degree. What happens is there's 2 real big components, well, 3. I do start the class off with a large history component, telling them how it came about, what's actually gone on in the field of rocketry, why it's become important down the road. And the next thing is we put in a hands-on component. They actually build rockets, and we go out to launch them with the understanding that they need to know what's going to happen when they press the button, or they don't get to press the button. And the last thing is there is the science component to it, where we actually do wrap it up in a whole bunch of quantification. Well, it started off, I think they had an idea that they'd be launching rockets from the get-go, and what they've really quickly found out is that, no, there is some science that you have to know first. One of the things that makes rocketry so interesting is you have to think several steps down the road. It's not important that you build something. You should understand it enough to know what it's going to do when you turn it on. More importantly, you've got to get your contingencies down. In other words, what happens if it goes horribly wrong? You have to plan for all of this before you even press the button. So as a result, they came in thinking, many of them came in thinking it was just going to be something like a hands-on, we're going to build rockets and just launch rockets all the time. And what they found out is, oh my gosh, it's a real science class first, and they are going to build rockets, but it's more along the lines of they're building rockets with an understanding that they have to know what it is that they're building. We have, they're actually going to be building small Quest-type rockets. This is, they're about a foot long, and they'll be launching in the football field there. And we expect them to go maybe 400 to 500 feet, no higher than that, because after all, we have to safely recover these things. And not only that, Damien's located in a possible approach to Honolulu International, so we cannot violate that in any way, shape, or form. But I think they'll enjoy it, and then we'll offer them the opportunity to go to bigger launches at a different place on the island later. And yeah, obviously, then there's the Team America Rocket Challenge, and these guys have to launch, and they have to launch fulfilling specific mission requirements. And the Team America Rocket Challenge is sponsored by the AIA, which are the Aerospace Industries.
It's not be a class, this will be our club.
That's right. The members can feed into this, and I generally feed in the AP students for this as a hands-on component, but members from the rocketry class can, if their interest is such, they can go ahead and pursue this as well. And this is sponsored by the Aerospace Industries Association, and what it is schools are given mission criteria that their rocket must fulfill. And so they have a time to launch, and if they do well on their scores, they get invited to a national competition where they get to meet and greet some of the pretty high-ranking aerospace company CEOs and several senators who have been very instrumental in pursuing aerospace. It depends. The actual difference with the TARC rocket from the class rocket is that the class rocket is just a simple up and down, show us that it worked. The TARC rocket has to fulfill mission criteria. It's got to launch 2 eggs to a height of 850 feet. It's got a time duration. The entire flight has to be done within 45 seconds. And the rocket itself is considerably bigger because it's got to fulfill those mission requirements. The weight we're estimating right now, we're beginning the design phase right now, so we haven't actually built one yet, but we're going to be starting that very, very soon. But I'm estimating it's going to be somewhere between 1 to 2 kilograms. I think the rocket itself is going to be about 36 inches tall. That's about the way it is. We use a BT-80 tube, which is a little bit more than 3 inches in diameter. It's got to carry 2 eggs in it. And as was said, we got to get it back safely, too. Well, the launching speed is actually not all that great. They're going to probably pull, if their rocket is designed the way I think it is, they're using an F engine, an F-type engine in it. I think that they're actually going to be, the rocket itself will undergo about 4 Gs acceleration. And again, kicking it up to 850 feet with that mass, and they're limited this time in engine size. They can't go up as big as they'd like to. They're stuck with an F-type engine, and that's about the biggest that they can go. And I estimate that its speed is going to be somewhere, it's going to have a burn time of about 2 seconds, so it'll be moving at about 80 meters a second, take about 8 seconds to slow down at the apogee. So about 80 meters a second after it's at burnout. I also lecture physics with at the University of Hawaii at the Windward campus, and I am the coordinator for the NASA Aerospace Education Laboratories, which is part of the Center for Aerospace Education. It's located at the Windward Community College, and there what we do is we try to teach aerospace, aeronautics, astronautics through all the grade levels, but I am particularly interested in teaching the college students at that point in time. I teach the calculus-based physics and astronomy.